a city where self-expression, leadership, creativity, and culture for children and youth, and it'll come together and create true community where everyone succeeds. It has 30 solutions and all of the indicators, but really it's a document to say that this is what we need for young people to be well. These are the things that we want to prioritize. These are the things that we want to fully fund, that we want to work together. We want to prioritize data. We want to prioritize true narratives. We want to prioritize policy and advocacy. We want to prioritize mental health and well-being and all of these things. And so that's what the Children and Youth Planning Board is. That is what the New Orleans Youth Master Plan is. And I'm really glad to be a part of this because I get to work with young people all day, every day.
So, Morgan, we wanted you on today to talk about a couple of things, and I think they connect beautifully, especially as I want to dig in a little bit around the master plan. And one of the things that you reminded us of when you were doing your introduction, the fact that the work there is a state mandate around the idea, a very seemingly common sense idea, that the folks who are responsible for the various systems that support our children and this community's children, that those organizations work together and that they coordinate, and that there be more than just one of the things that I love about, I love a good 10-year plan. One of the things I love about the master plan, the youth master plan, beyond the fact that it was following a lot of the ideals that we seek to uphold and follow as well, is listening to the people who are most directly affected and having them make the decisions, and those who we have empowered to implement these strategies, these programs, these resources, they would have to follow that plan.
Yes.
So we've put the things together to, number one, UIs exist to provide that support, that training. I know a lot of your work, again, your team was on here and they acquitted themselves ably, your team members and the young leaders that you are developing. I see them everywhere, engaging in every aspect of leadership. But you have to navigate this relationship where there is a mandate by the state of Louisiana and there's an ordinance in the city of New Orleans, but there's still not enough resources behind it.
No.
To really make it, so you guys find yourselves in that position of playing watchdog, right? So. And this also connects to what we wanted to also have you on to talk about is voting rights, right?
Yes.
Because what you all have is the kind of a really great model of what happens and why people get discouraged, right, from voting, is that you have the community that's most directly affected, the voters, the youth in this instance, talking and getting information. You don't just let them sit around and say, this is what's wrong from my viewpoint, and this is what I'd like to have fixed. And I want to be really clear about something. These young people are sophisticated and curious and incredibly thoughtful, and don't just think about themselves, right? This is not people sitting around trying to figure out how they can get ponies.
No, they're not.
Nor are they just trying to address the very real challenges. It's always startling when we think about how disadvantaged our children are, right? How many of our children live in poverty in New Orleans and in Louisiana? How many of our children don't have access to adequate food, don't have access to adequate health care? And we tend to think about those things as, well, it's their parents' fault, as opposed to, and so it also adds to this layer of a group of our citizens who are without representation and without a voice, because not only do they not have any say-so inside of the system because they don't get to vote because they're underage, they also, their challenges are blamed on other people, on the adults in their life, not the system.
Yeah. And I think that that's why I like the Youth Master Plan too, because it's a promissory note. It's a platform. It's a list of demands, a manifesto, if you will. It's a
Ah,
focused document, a platform that if these are not met, then this is what we have to be able to hold elected officials accountable for. I have conversations with young people all the time about the just different layers of democracy, because of course we would think that, democracy and how it's taught is like you vote for something and then, or vote for someone or vote for something, and then that is supposed to manifest in your life. Like you're supposed to be able to see that in your life. And what young people are definitely seeing is, particularly now, but this is not the first time they've lived under this type of regime and this kind of ideology. But what they're seeing now is that impacts of voting, but then also how voting is diluted.
yep.
And so as we connect that to our our ongoing fight for voting rights, we know that oftentimes we can't elect the candidate of choice because of the way the maps are drawn, because we do not have full representation, and where we are teaching that one vote that gives you your voice and that vote matters. We want to make sure that we understand the nuances of what's happening, because if we don't understand the nuances, then we get onto the other side like we are today, and we're asking, so what happened and how did we get here?
Right.
And I also like to remind young people that it's not that long ago. We were fighting for voting rights at the same time. Miss Leona Tate was desegregating schools, and you still know Miss Leona Tate. Like,
Yep.
we just went to the Tate Center. And
Yes.
so really
Same.
understanding,
I was there
yeah,
yesterday.
exactly. Me and you were just in the meeting there a week or two ago.
That's right. That's right.
And so I'm trying to explain to the young folks, and not just our young people, but their families and the communities. But again, why I'm focusing on young people too is because if young people see how we meet this moment, right, and see how we are showing up, and see what the adults around them are doing, they're going to meet us where we are.
Mm-hmm.
That's where they're going to meet us. They're going to be fighting fascism in their schools. They're going to be fighting censorship. They're going to be fighting regimes and things here that are meant to police them. This is what is happening. And so making sure that we connect the dots and tying that into why we're fighting for voting rights, again, at our state capital
Right.
and at our nation's capital, is how we're connecting those dots.
Right. So I want to you've taken us there. I want to I want to get to the voting rights piece and break down for the listening audience. I'm sure a lot of people have been hearing about it, talking about it. We wanted to talk to you about it. Your previous role with the Power Coalition. You all are
Mm-hmm.
still supporters and work very closely with the Power Coalition. So I
Indeed.
want to talk about that, but I also want to make sure that you articulated it beautifully, that what you are doing is preparing young people for a version of citizenship that some of us are about to lose if
Mm-hmm.
we're not careful, right? If we don't show up. And we often lament, when we talk about elections, when we talk about engagement, we often lament young people's either we don't like the way they're participating, we think they're too
Right.
boisterous, we think that they're unrealistic, we think that they're lazy. And this has happened time and time and time again. Um,
Mm-hmm.
Gen X is not special in our disdain for millennials and for Gen Z. We're not special, which is kind of sad because I know as a Gen Xer, we felt like we were doing something, in this modern era, and we weren't. I mean, we were, but it wasn't new, right? And
Mm-hmm.
of course, the baby boomers are infamous for their movement inside of Woodstock, right? The anti-war movement. These were not um, these were not small things. The civil rights movement. These were not small things that the
Mm-hmm.
young people of those eras were attempting to do. You go back even further, the so-called greatest generation and their real time fights against fascism in other parts of the world. But you also, it doesn't seem like we've built on that, because I like to use the Harvey Dent quote from the Dark Knight. If you sometimes you if you're the hero, you might live long enough to see yourself become the villain. And it seems like that's what's happening with a lot of
Mhm.
our as people get older, they get more conservative. That's an accepted piece. I mean, when I think about the fact that rappers, hip hop legends who are older, a little older than me, who are now, one, they're alive, and two, they're donning MAGA hats and
Mm.
running around with crypto bros and all manner of foolishness. Um,
Mhm.
and so it does behoove us to look to the young people, not simply to save us from ourselves, but to set them on a path, so that help them get on a path and stay on a path so that they don't become the villains in their own stories.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
how you do that, I think part of it is that if you feel like when you're young, and you're ambitious and you're eager and you have all these ideas and you're not met with real welcome, if you're not met with real respect, you fight your way through until you actually get some power. And I think that's what starts to sour it, right? Is that by that point, you're a quote unquote adulting, and you've got
Mhm.
bills and you're making compromises because you got to take care of family and things like that. And instead of fighting for, the future that we all need, you then start fighting, you start thinking that what your job is to fight just for yourself. And that's one of
Mhm.
the things that I want to make sure the listening audience understands about the young folks that you are working with. How, yes, they are rooted in their very real experiences, and experiences that would break a lot of people twice their age, triple their ages, right? They're dealing with homelessness, they're dealing with abuse, they're dealing with lack of resources, and they're dealing with it while they got to go to school every day. Um,
Exactly.
and so they're you all are helping them. This process, this mandate, is also ambitious in other ways, not just laying out what the actors in the youth sector need to be doing, but it's also giving these amazing young people an extraordinary opportunity to try to remake their world.
Exactly. Exactly. Really understanding the why. I think that
Hmm.
oftentimes when we don't feel, and young people are famously uh, subjugated to this around like not being heard, not feeling like they belong, but every policy and impact and decision impacts them, that they can feel in a real way. If if the community around me is housing insecure, then I'm probably housing insecure, and I have less agency to be able to do something about it, about the insecurity. If I'm experiencing mental health, where am I going? If I am experiencing a lack of opportunity, where am I going? And so they're feeling that in a microcosm, and feel like they don't have outlets to be able to do it, to be able to express what's happening in a very real way. And then also a lack of real political education. I think that when we don't understand and have a container for young people to understand like these things are happening and like experiencing why these are happening, the curiosity needs to be nurtured, and they need to understand the why. They need to feel seen and heard and feel like they belong, but really also giving them really deep levels of understanding, not surface levels, understanding of freedom and all of this empowering things, but really like how do these things work? Like how do these systems work in a way that's digestible to them? All the way down to whenever they establish going to school, they really kind of understand, oh, this is how power is wielded and wielded.
Hmm.
And so they can understand how decisions are made. When we talk about redistricting, the reason why I talk to them about how redistricting affects them is where you live. It talks about the school board. It talks about who's making decisions on behalf of you. It's why your homeboy can live down the street from you and have a whole nother city council person or have a whole nother state representative. This is the kind of things that we're talking about. But then also rooting it and connecting that to how uh, youth have always had linkages and lineages to power, into resistance, into oppression,
Right.
and really pulling in those stories around how they have been the agents of creativity and freedom in a way that adults' minds can be confined.
Right.
Because, like as you said, you're going through life and you adulting, and all of that creativity and freedom kind of gets systematized out of you.
Right. Right. I mean, the imagination is you're taught to it as when I become an adult, it's time to put away childish things like
Yes.
dreams and aspirations and notions that things could change. And I'm an adult. I get it. I get it. I also get, especially when you've taken responsibility for other people, either as the
Mhm.
head of a household, as a part of someone's support system, and you start thinking about like how you can make choices to keep the lights on, and when things are terribly difficult, and but there also has to be we have to keep pushing to make better opportunities, and I think that's the part that once you, especially
More
if you
opportunity.
struggled for 10, 20, 30 years, it becomes challenging for older folks to remember all of that promise. They're just like, look, it didn't work, we tried, we failed, I got bills to pay, I just need to put my head down and keep it moving. And y'all young folk, y'all youngsters, y'all are not connected to reality. But
Yeah.
except the opposite is the case, right? Because they are super familiar with reality. And again, I'm not going to say all young people, I've got all young people know all of the answers, but they do understand in a way that a lot of people don't about what it means to be powerless.
Mhm.
And but still having to live with the consequences of other people's decisions.
Mhm.
Um and not going down as easily, especially when those people making those decisions, I'm not just talking about their parents, I'm talking about all of us. And it's one of the reasons why when we talk about especially as we want to talk about things like crime and things like educational lack of educational attainment, we talk about how those systems seem to direct kids in only a few ways, and not giving them a wide breadth of options or the ability to really kind of reel things back, especially with the internet, right? um
Yep.
and I don't mean just, I don't mean just violence and things like that plague a lot of our communities. I'm talking about bullying and the kind of things that could really set a kid on a really bad path. um how many times have we've seen too many stories where young people have taken their lives because of online bullying and school bullying that just gets out of hand, and children who have incredible support systems just not feeling like they could access those things, not feeling like they're seen, not feeling like they have options, and making an unimaginable choice, right, for many of us. But and that's also part of our problem is that we can't imagine it. We can't figure out how to intervene and how they can help how we can make these things better so that these children don't hurt themselves or someone else.
Mhm. Mhm.
So Morgan,
Yeah.
go ahead.
Mhm. No, no, no. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, I was gonna say I was gonna pivot us a little bit because that got a little dark, unfortunately. I mean, it's just such an extraordinary work that you're doing, and we could talk about it all day. But we did want to talk about voting rights. But I did want to. I'm glad you were able to help set the stage because, again, what we're talking about with the Supreme Court case that was heard last week. And I want to make sure that we're talking about something that you have been involved in when you were at Power Coalition. I know you're still supporting that work. Is that there's a legislative session starting on Thursday. And I don't know how
Mhm.
many people are talking about that.
Exactly. Exactly.
So
Yeah.
go ahead.
There's a legislative session starting on Thursday, and I just think that we might as well say that this is just going to be the rhythm of this administration on our state level. That they're going to just be calling special session and throwing things against the wall and seeing what sticks. And so, as we are armored up and preparing ourselves for these very real fights that we have at these various levels of government, just know that we probably are going to have a cadence of having regular sessions in the spring and some type of special session in the fall, if not a special session before the spring session.
Right.
And again, these are all just tactics and tools and sorcery to be able to tire us out. But nevertheless, whatever mediums that we have and that we can share with you all around what is happening, we will share. And so, yes, we do have a special session that is opening on Thursday. And I agree, Andrika, I'm not sure how many people know about this.
Yeah, because I was surprised, pleasantly so, to see how many people started talking about the Supreme Court cases and making the context, right? Louisiana, it's never good when we're the focus of national conversation, right? Unfortunately, we can't ever be on the forefront for something good. It's always something really bad that's happening. And I wasn't really sure how the coverage of the Supreme Court case being heard last week was going to break through with the shutdown, right? Because the shutdown is definitely a bigger story. And especially as, we're looking at servicemen and women not being paid. We're looking at, looks like if the shutdown continues much longer, SNAP benefits won't be paid for November. And those kinds of effects, all of the people who have been furloughed, the fact that the Speaker of the House has allowed has introduced the notion that, unlike every other shutdown that we've ever had, that the government employees who are now being furloughed might lose their money, and also the extraordinary might not get paid, might not get back pay.
Get back pay, yeah.
Even though that's not how a shutdown works. It's never how a shutdown has ever worked. And then also, finally, I think the ultimate insult that the Trump administration using the shutdown to quote unquote target quote unquote Democrat programs and looking to fire those personnel. That's been stopped. That's been halted temporarily. We'll see how long that lasts. But that's been halted. But that's been their desire. So I wasn't sure if this case could actually be heard above the noise, but the amazing advocates at the Power Coalition and the NAACP Legal Defense Fund and ACLU and all of the other people who have been engaged around this issue and been leading on this fight managed to get, to make their voices heard and make sure that, and they got assists from some of the good guys in media, right? So let's remind everybody about this lawsuit. This was simple terms, and you correct me when I'm wrong, because I'm just going to speak out in simple terms. We've been talking about the Voting Rights Act, and the fact is that in order to redress the inequities caused by Jim Crow and the fact that African Americans and other ethnic minorities and immigrants have not always had equal access to voting rights, and certainly the idea of being able to elect someone who looks like you or someone who truly represents you to be in a district that ideologically represents you. And so the Voting Rights Act has been the law of the land for over 50 years. So there are things to do away with, things like poll taxes, and I think this is something that people don't remember. To your point. But again, Leona Tate is still alive. Ruby Bridges is still alive. The folks, these extraordinary children, again, who desegregated the schools in New Orleans, and now you fast forward 50 years and they're still around, like they're maybe a few years older than me. These are not ancient tomes. These are people. And again, they were the children who led the way. And so now all of that work that they have done, all of the victories that we have gotten in subsequent years are jeopardized because the Supreme Court, even after, and this is one part that I wanted you to talk through as well, there's a little bit of a contradiction going on here too, is that, and that's the part that's so scary, is that this would seem to be with this court settled law because they entertained this very concept, 3 years ago? The idea of that our voting maps needed to African Americans and other minorities needed to be, if they wanted, they needed to have the opportunity to elect someone who aligns with them. That representation does matter, and that in Louisiana, where where we have those 6 seats, a third of them should be Democrat, and a majority minority. That meant that we would have two of those, and we got two of those. The state actually conceded the Landry. That was the first special session he called in
Yep.
January of last year.
Yep.
And in addition to putting these maps in, go ahead. No, go.
No, I mean, that's the biggest question on why this is still going on. It was law of the land. We have an actual representative of that seat.
Yep.
And so why is this still going on? I mean, point blank period, the reason why it's still going on is because of racism. But as you took us down this timeline, it's definitely a cat and mouse game, trying to see what courts do in order to be able to see how you can move. And so that's why we are getting some traction around what's happening on the state level, because actually what's happening on the state level, they were trying to wait to see what the higher courts were going to do, the Supreme Court was going to do.
Right. Even though the higher courts have ruled on a similar case in, I believe, Alabama?
Yep, Alabama.
And that was like 3 years ago. So we've got a ruling, and it's the same court. No one new has been put on the Supreme Court since then.
Yes, and that case is called Milligan. And so, I mean, this is still ongoing because the fight over political representation and voting rights has not been settled legally or politically. The courts, especially the Supreme Court, keep reconsidering how far protections of Section 2 on the Voting Rights Act should go in preventing racial discrimination and redistricting. The maps have been challenged multiple times because, as Andronika pointed out, we have historically diluted Black voting power, even though our state is 1/3 Black population, and so that we should have 2 Black elected officials on that congressional level, which we do now. Like that happened, and we won. But this is still happening because the law is unsettled, and so the Supreme Court could drastically change how race is considered in redistricting. And Section 2 was gutted. And so that's why you keep seeing a lot of these things keep coming up. A lot of times people are like, well, where did this come from? Because this didn't happen before. Well, Section 2 was gutted. And so this is how Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act, was gutted. And so that's how they're able to keep doing this. And so some Louisiana officials, again, from that northern Louisiana area, and again, that is why we need full actualized power throughout the state. It just can't be concentrated in our New Orleans, Baton Rouge corridor. We need it throughout the state. Andronika spoke earlier, again, of the Speaker of the House and how the Speaker of the House is now saying that our federal workers might not get back pay, which has never historically ever happened. He's from North Louisiana.
Right.
And so that is how they keep doing it. Some elected officials up there said they oppose a map that gives Black voters more political influence, even though it already went all the way up to the Supreme Court. This timing, again, is strategic. State leaders are trying to align election laws and deadline with whatever ruling comes out next year. Again, with this cat and mouse game that they are playing. And you saw some of this and how aligned our state and federal government elected officials are. You all saw some of this during the spring amendment when Landry got caught on that hot mic talking to Speaker Johnson, I believe. And so they're very much aligned.
And so that is, and that's also part of the game that they're playing, is that while, and it's despicable in many ways, because in order to achieve their partisan goals, their goals of consolidating power, they're doing the thing that they're saying the quiet part out loud. I mean, oftentimes, I think one of the most challenging parts around doing this work, when we're trying to have frank conversations with people who are with white folks, basically, and there is this immediate backlash to the notion that they could be racist, and that. And we've got to spend time debating the fact that we insinuated, or sometimes we even said, "Hey, that was racist," and what that does to them from a feeling perspective. It has no power over them. It's not going to cost them anything, and except our good opinion. And they don't. and instead of saying, okay, let me just stop being racist and black people will like me. No. I've got to make it so that you accept what's in my heart. And and I don't care what's in your heart. Like, that's the conversation I know I often find myself. I don't care what's in your heart. I'm talking about what you're doing. And what you're doing is harming this community. And you're doing it because you think that you think that the rules don't apply to you, or rather the rules won't protect us. And you're trying to actually make that true. So it doesn't matter whether or not you like me as an individual, you will hurt me as a member of this collective. You will do things that will harm me. And so, yeah, like, why should I like you for that? Why should I why you and it's one of the things with Speaker Johnson in particular. When you see him articulating these nonsensical arguments and talking in circles and just lying, right? A lot of it's rooted in, well, you shouldn't say that. You shouldn't be so mean about that. You shouldn't be insinuating that I don't care about my constituents. That's just mean. And it's like, chicken, you don't. Like, what you're doing disregards your constituents. Disregards most of them, black and white. You've just been able to con some of the white ones into thinking that Latinos and African Americans and indigenous folks are somehow trying to get something extra that would undermine them. And it's that part of it's exhausting, because you're like, can we just talk about what you're doing? Can we have a conversation? Can we stop with the whataboutism? Talking about, oh, well, you didn't say anything when Obama did something similar. A, you're lying, and B, who cares? Is Obama the Speaker of the House right now? No. So can we? Are you harming your constituency? Are you are you doing something to consolidate power? And I think that's also a challenge for this moment, and why we've got to speak about this explicitly. Is that this isn't just ideological concerns. And I would argue, and I think you would too, Morgan, is that as black people, as women, it's never been ideological, right? We have been fighting for bodily autonomy. We have been fighting for fair and equal representation under the law. We have been fighting for that for a very, very, very long time. We have been fighting to bring forth those mandates and make them real, right? Even though both of us were born after the civil rights movement, after these amazing laws were put into place, and we were raised with different expectations, rights that we've seen eroded in the last 50 years, by the way. And that has all been dismissed and framed. Everything from a woman's right to choose to the Voting Rights Act to affirmative action. Those have all been framed as culture war. Those have all been framed as identity politics, as opposed to full faith and credit as an American citizen. We've watched our rights be eroded in the last 10, 15 years, and initially it's been just that frame of identity politics. Now we're getting to the place where, in order to further consolidate power and to do things like, declare a trade war on China and give billions of dollars to Argentina, and to allow a foreign national country to operate airbase on U.S. soil, in order to do these things that don't have anything to do with our everyday rights, but violate the very nature of our country. We have elected officials trying to consolidate power by going to their go-to point. Oh, let's disenfranchise some black folks.
Yep.
I know how we get a couple extra seats in the House. Let's disenfranchise some black people. And oh, look, there's a lawsuit that one of our states had been working through. I mean, because that's the other part that's just really extraordinary. The state of Louisiana, because it was settled law, recognized that they had to compromise and create the second majority minority district.
Right.
That's what happened last year. That's why and why we had an election and why Congressman Cleo Fields was elected or stood for that district. And several people ran, actually.
Mm-hmm.
And the people inside of that district selected and elected Congressman Cleo Fields, returning him to Congress. And and so now that case has wound its way through the courts, and the state of Louisiana initially was supporting their maps. They were saying, "Hey, we drew these maps."
Yep.
And I think that's been one of the not incredulous, because it is who it is, but that they would seek to undermine. And again, they would say, "Hey, we had to do this." And there was also arguments being made that we had people making arguments that Governor Landry signed off on these maps for political retribution, right? That he wanted to push out his political enemies inside of his own party. While we were also doing that, and that's the piece that's going to be really interesting about the session that's supposed to start on this Thursday. Although, have you heard, I saw this somewhere, that they might not start on Thursday because there's, some games this weekend. So maybe not. Maybe not Thursday, maybe Monday.
Yeah, I heard it was I heard it was Monday too, or at least that's when everything's going to get popping, and that's when Power Coalition is doing their rally on the steps of the Capitol at 1:00 as well. And so go to powercoalition.org to be able to sign up for that, because we really need that power. We need that power of putting your voice down. As Andronika mentioned, over the last 10 to 15 years, we've just seen rights just gutted and eroded. And we would say also, we would argue that we don't know how entrenched those rights were. Some might say that folks weren't listening to a lot of the folks that were at the center of these organizing discussions, the people who are impacted the most. And as Andronika articulated, the way to be able to lessen our power is to disenfranchise the Black vote, because they know that Black people are the moral compass of our communities, of our nation. A lot of times with the policies that we want don't just help Black folks, they help all folks. And so we don't really have culturally that individualism in our DNA. That's something learned that we learned through navigating these white spaces. Nonetheless, that is the tactic to be able to disenfranchise. Just that one seat. We just got one seat at the federal level, and so they want to take that back because they know how powerful that one seat is, and that's why it's so important that we show up during this special session. If on the state level, if they're going to do this trickery and sorcery and have all these sessions whenever they want to, we need to show up every time and say, "You're not going to take our seat. That is our seat. We have already said it is the law of the land. The guy is already there, and we're going to articulate that seat and move policies through that seat while holding that person accountable to the people that got them there." And so on the 27th, they're having that rally, and we're asking everybody to show up. But we're also asking folks to testify during this special session. It'll probably be a couple of days. I'm thinking that they're saying like maybe November 13th or so, give or take. It depends on when they open it. But we need to stay on record on why we do not want anything taken away, why we need our voices heard, why we need our power to be held. And so we're asking people who testify, put your name on the record, because we have to have a record. Because, again, all of this, democracy is very layered. And so redistricting is one part, voting in every election. There's another election, I think, on November 11th for the runoff. An important clerk of courts is there, and also in District E, I think, is a runoff, maybe District A as well in New Orleans. And so it's important for us to vote. It's important for us to show up at the Capitol. They do a lot of stuff at the Capitol, y'all, that y'all have no idea about. And it's important for us to either watch what's happening, to submit comment cards on the day before, and or go up if you can.
Right.
And then thirdly, it's important for us to hold our elected officials accountable to what they said that they were going to do, and to remind them what they're going to do as well, because they are there for you. But it's also important for us to be able to sue, and that's what a lot of things you're seeing now, like why redistricting is all the way at the Supreme Court, is because we're using all of the tools of democracy, and litigation is another tool. And so when you all submit testimony on the record to say, I want my elections to be fair. I want to be able to elect a candidate of choice. I want this policy. I want that policy. When that's on the record, some of our movement lawyers, our civil rights lawyers, NAACP, LDS, and ACLU, and SPLC, and those kinds of folks, they're able to use that for litigation and to sue. And so that's what you're seeing right now, that litigation arm of democracy. So that's where you get those Thurgoods and all of those folks there that was working right when we were desegregating schools. Thurgood was right there, and Marshall Motley and all those folks was right there suing to make sure that we have the right at our level, and so at that federal level. And so that's why it's important. I'm not sure if it's opening on Thursday. I think Thursday is going to be like a ceremonial opening, and then the real things are going to start that following week on that 27th.
Gotcha. And that's good to know. And I think also, too, I want to drill down a little bit about, because you made an excellent point. We want to make sure people sign up and people show up where they can. They need to be reaching out to their legislators. Regardless of whether or not you think that legislator is aligned with where you are, make sure they know that you're watching. They know that you have expectations about how they behave themselves. And also, one of the things that I wanted to talk through with you, Morgan, is some of the trickiness, because initially, I mean, I still haven't seen the full call, but what we are expecting to see is an attempt to kind of change one of the other things that Governor Landry got done in last year's legislative session, or addressing some of the challenges. If the Voting Rights Act falls, it can't, the court won't rule before January of next year. And one of the things that Governor Landry got in this legislative session, that special session that got these maps drawn, he also changed the way we do certain elections, like the Supreme Court, the Louisiana Supreme Court, the Louisiana Public Service Commission, and all of our federal electors, U.S. Senate and Congress. Those races are now partisan primaries. And typically what we do in Louisiana is you get in where you fit in. You're running, and if you can get to 50% plus one, you win outright. If you're not, whoever the top two vote getters, regardless of party, move forward. So you could have 2 Democrats, 2 Republicans in a runoff. You could have 2 independents. It's just really a debate of ideas, and everybody gets to vote for who they think is the best, regardless of party affiliation. Last year, Governor Landry asked for and got that changed so that those races, and now we have an even longer season. So next year's November election for Congress are actually going, and for U.S. Senate and for Public Service Commission, the 2 seats in the Public Service Commission, as well as the Supreme Court seats, Louisiana Supreme Court seats, would start with qualifying starting in January for an April election. And if the Supreme Court rules in January, they won't be able to implement the new maps in time, because qualifying will have started already, or people will have been preparing, people will have been getting ready to qualify for whatever partisan primary they want to run in. And so it's my understanding that they're thinking about maybe changing the dates in order to accommodate any ruling.
Yes. Again, trickery and sorcery, all types of just confusion. So this special session isn't just about scheduling elections. It's about positioning Louisiana's political leadership ahead of the major Supreme Court decisions. And so that is what we were talking about earlier, the Callis versus Louisiana case. And that's currently before Supreme Court. That is the one where you might have saw some folks from Louisiana there. The president of NAACP was there, president of Power Coalition, plaintiffs on the case, and they were in D.C. for that. And so that and again, this would weaken that case would weaken or strike down Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act, which protects voters from racial discrimination and redistricting. And if that happens, Louisiana's legislators could gain more freedom to redraw those maps. And so by calling this special session is allowing for those election codes that Andronica was talking about, deadlines, and he's giving lawmakers the power to be able to adjust election timelines, like moving qualifying deadlines, so that next year they would have to redraw those districts after the court rules. And so this is really setting the stage for future redistricting.
Right.
It also gives lawmakers flexibility to act if the Supreme Court weakens voting rights protections, and it keeps control in their hands and not the courts, and more importantly, not you all, the voters.
Peoples.
And so it definitely sounds like, oh, this is just kind of procedural, and but this could really have huge impact on who represents Louisiana and whose vote truly counts.
But that's why I wanted to make sure we talked about it, because that's how sometimes our leaders, they fall for the okie doke, and then they're like, well, what did you want me to do? Like, okay, no, that's why we want community to understand. We want the listening audience to understand, and we're telling you to call your legislators, your legislator in the House, your legislator in the Senate, and tell them, even if you know that they agree with you, you want your rights protected, you don't think that African Americans and other minorities should be marginalized in this way, even if you know your elected official is on your side, is on our side, call them and say, don't you go up there and fall for no stupid stuff now.
Yes.
Don't you
let them trick you do say that
into
yes,
like,
and when they're talking during these special sessions, they say, I've heard of it from a lot of my constituents, and they're saying this, this, and this. It gives them the opportunity to be able to hold their peers accountable too. Well, this is what the people in my community want. The other thing I would like to also hone in on, and I'm not sure if we really honed in on this, is this can also have major ripple effects on the state level, right? Meaning our own state districts could be affected,
right?
Judicial and school board and local maps, right? So there's state level, your state level maps. We could gain some more seats on the House and Senate level. I can't remember the numbers offhand right now. I'm gonna look it up. But and also our judicial elections. Again, those judge seats matter so much, you all. Local maps. School board, city councils. Again, it all can be redrawn in a way that dilutes power at all of these different levels, and they could use these. The state could use this to prepare ground, so they could say this is the precedent. So whatever they say at the federal level, they could say, oh, well, we're just going to use what they say at the federal level for the state level. We have the ability at the state level to be able to gain more seats at the House and Senate level, which could change our supermajority at the state level, and that is why it's hard to get things through policy-wise on the state level, because we have a supermajority there, and so whatever happens at the federal level can impact the state level.
Right, that's right, and that's another important part too, because you could get people going, well, it doesn't matter with Congress, the Speaker of the House and the Majority Leader are from Louisiana, and we have all of this power, and it doesn't matter. So what is, having these 2 more seats? It matters because we all should have equal access under the law. We should all have full faith and credit inside of this democratic. It shouldn't just be an experiment. It should be a reality. That is what was promised. Number one, and number two. Morgan, you just made that point beautifully. This isn't just that, right? The next, and again, it didn't happen to everybody. This just happened in the New Orleans election. A lot of people did not know that the maps had changed. That their district maps had changed.
Nope.
That their polling locations had changed.
A
lot of things shifted around, and a lot of this is a ripple effect of these Supreme Court rulings, the deployment of, again, I want to remind everybody who's listening, people of color, African Americans in particular, and immigrants of color, people who are not white, basically, and who are not white men, have only had the version of access that we've had, which is still not 100%, but it's better than it was the 200 years prior, for about 50 years. And those rights have been slowly being eroded. And it doesn't just stop with abortion. It doesn't just stop with affirmative action and getting into colleges. It doesn't just stop with those things. It gets down into our communities with the very maps about the people who you should care the most about, right? Yes, we should care. We should just care as much as about who is going to be the assessor as we do who would be the president, because the assessor is going to have a bigger impact on your day-to-day life than the president will. It's not that the president is unimportant. I think all of the federal workers who live in Louisiana, who are listening to this show right now, would tell you the president's pretty damn important to me, Andronika and Morgan, right? But we would also say, hey, what's your tax bill look like? You want, you know, that there. So we have to have those connections, that we have to understand who represents us so we can hold them accountable. And it's
exactly,
if there are ripple effects coming, a decision that was made 2, 3, 4 years ago. The census was in 2020.
2020.
Why did maps change in 2025 in the New Orleans District Council level?
Mm-hmm.
Right? That's 5 years. That means it took longer than normal to finally sort this out. And to Morgan, to your point, it's still not sorted out all the way.
Nope.
We're
about to do another census in 2030 in another
and
district.
We're about to do another census. And I mean, again, we got a call. Somebody called in. Hi, thank you for joining us.
Hi.
Oh, we didn't get your name.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Janae.
Hey, Janae, thank you for calling. Morgan and I are on the line. What do you want to add to the conversation?
I had 2 quick questions.
Okay.
When is the rally and how can I get there?
All right, good question. Remind us again. The rally is Monday.
Monday. Yeah, it's Monday. It's Monday, March 27th, 2025. If you go to powercoalition.org/redistricting, they have a way that you can sign up. Also, they are also having a training. So if you've always wanted to know how to testify at the Capitol, like what's the best practices and those kinds of things, they're having a virtual webinar tomorrow, Wednesday, October 22nd, which is 6:30. You can also register for that on their website as well or on their Instagram. And then you can also sign up for buses. If you need transportation to be able to get there, they have buses coming from all across the state. So when you go on their website, you can sign up and they'll tell you how to get there.
Okay, one more question. Is the bus, is it AC on the bus?
Oh, yeah, they're going to be like charter buses, not like school buses.
Oh, thank you. I'll be there.
All right, Janae, thank you for calling in.
All righty.
Thank
Y'all
you
have
so
a great
much.
one.
Well, I think that's a really good way to end. Morgan, I don't know if you noticed, it's been an hour.
Oh, wow.
Thankfully,
okay.
Janae called and I looked at the clock. I was like, oh, Lord. It's been an hour.
It's like we're just talking to each other.
That's right. So Janae, thank you for calling in. Thank you for asking, because that was going to be how I wanted to end it and to make sure that people knew about signing up. We are actually we're supposed to be having our leadership board meeting. We're probably going to change it to make sure, because we were waiting to hear what the date was for the rally, and we want to make sure that as many people can come as possible. So we're probably going to pivot a little bit as well. And we'll be back next week to talk more about that. I want to thank our guest, Morgan Shannon, the Executive Director for the New Orleans Children and Youth Planning Board, for joining us today. She has been a fantastic partner over the years, and we're so excited about the work that she's doing. We're going to have you back. And I want you, I promised your team last time that we would all get in the studio next time. So before the end of the year, we're going to have y'all back. Okay. And we want to talk about, with the Youth Planning Board members and team members, about housing for youth, because this is something that people miss all the time. But we're so grateful to have you all here today to talk about this. It's an important time. There's going to be a rally next Monday in Baton Rouge on the steps of the Capitol to talk about our voting rights and this special session that seeks to change who we can vote for and who represents us, and also seeks to change the very nature of our elections again. You need to be engaged. You need to be involved. Call your legislators. Call your legislators. You got 2 of them. Call them and say, don't you fall for no foolishness, and don't and you better do right by the people of Louisiana, black, white, and other. So
better do right.
They better do right. So we'll be back next week. Same bat time, same bat channel on WBOK 1230 AM. I'm your host, Andronika Morris. And remember, in order to put people first, we got to put housing first. Y'all take care of each other out there.